This summer, Alan and I got our hands on Rowan Lawrence Training Journal. We previously did an episode on Believe Training Journal, so go back and listen if you haven't heard that one already. And we realized why our reactions to situations are so different. Because me and Alan, we're actually really different, even though, we spend a lot of time together and we do a lot of things together. We found out that there are two types of people. There are worriers, and then there are warriors. I'll let you guess which one of us belongs to which category. In 2019, Alan and I did a 5-day stage race in the Selkirk Mountains in BC, where they have something we don't usually need to worry about during our training runs here in Montreal, which is bears. Knowing this, I read the entire Parks Canada guide on how to travel safely through bear country, while Alan just agreed to listen to me tell him everything I'd been learning during our runs. I'm sorry. I'm seeing our guest is already giggling, so now here I am giggling. At this point, you've probably guessed who is the worrier and who's the warrior, but that's not the point of the story. Despite our different personalities, we agreed that we definitely didn't want to see a bear while we were running. Unlike our guest today, who doesn't seem to be fazed by the presence of fresh tracks and traveling in the mountains alone. Hi, and welcome to the Running Book Reviews podcast, where we review books written for runners, about runners, and by runners to help you decide if you would like to read the book for yourself. We also hope that listening to us chat about running can help keep you motivated about your own running, or maybe inspire you to try something new. My name is Liz, and with my co-host Alan, we're going to talk with author Kenneth Posner about his book, Chasing the Grid.
Chasing the Grid is the story of the author's physical and spiritual journey running in the Catskill Mountains. Originally wanting to beat the record for climbing all 35 peaks in one outing, Kenneth Posner got injured on his second attempt and needed to find a new goal for his running. His new goal came from a chance encounter while in the mountains he loved, and it's the main subject of the book. So let me tell you a bit about Kenneth Posner, or Ken, as we're going to refer to him during our conversations. Ken's running credentials include completing 110 races of marathon distance or longer and setting fastest known times for the 294-mile Badwater Double in Death Valley and New York's 350-mile long path. Hang on. I'm just doing a bio here, and I'm just sort of casually just mentioning these runs. But just think about that. I mean, people talk about one day doing Badwater and it being completely impossible to do one Badwater. How on earth and why on earth would you do a Badwater Double? I guess we'll get to that. But that sounds absolutely crazy. So as a barefoot athlete, he's run 112 races, climbed 485 mountains, including every 4,000 footer in the Northeast. I guess that's in Northeast USA. And thru-hiked the John Muir Trail. As board chair for the New York, New Jersey Trail Conference and Run Wild Inc., he supports land conservation and stewardship and advocates for connecting young people with nature. Following service as a U.S. Army infantry officer, his business career now spans 30 years as a Wall Street analyst and corporate executive. Not only is he a superman on the trails, but he's a corporate executive. Oh dear, I'm feeling intimidated already. He is currently serving as Senior Vice President of Strategic Planning and Investor Relations at Mr. Cooper Group, the nation's largest mortgage service. So welcome to the podcast, Ken.
Thank you, Alan, and thank you, Liz. And those stats are a little bit out of date. I'm up to 566 mountains.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, we just got it off the bio.
Wow.
I was just out in New Mexico and Colorado and had a lot of fun out there. And that's, I'm trying to get to 1,000 before I'm dead.
My good. Well, you're well on your way. Actually.
It's very cool that you count them all.
Yeah.
I can imagine my bio would say something like he has run quite a few races and he's climbed quite an impressive number of mountains, because I would never have the documentation or the records or the notes to know actually what the numbers
Well,
are.
well, I'm a CPA.
There you
That's
go.
my excuse. I was
Okay.
apparently traumatized when I took the test and
There you go.
passed by the lowest possible score. Um, people talk, these neuroscientists, they talk about, dopamine hits.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And every time I put a number in a cell, I'm like happy. I'm like, I
You
did
know what?
something.
I completely understand that, but I'm like that with like checklists. So I like to make lists and
Oh
then like
yeah.
check
And
things off.
schedules.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
so training plans. So I print them out in I put them in an Excel spreadsheet and I print them out and I
Uh-huh.
put them on the fridge and then I color in the box after I do the run. It's just, I
Oh
throw them
wow.
out
Yeah.
at the end of the
Colors.
training
All right. So
cycle.
Liz and I are soulmates. By the way,
Yes.
I've kept every single medal, finisher's medal from every single run. They're in two cardboard boxes in the garage, and I keep threatening to take them out, hang them up
Yeah.
throughout the house. And, I can't even remember 99% of what these things were, but I'm like, at least I did something.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel the same about medals. So we have my husband also likes to race. So we have just those like hooks you kind of hook on the door and you put like your house coat on it. Well, we've got two of those, one each, but we hang a medal. And then when they get too full, we take the whole bunch and we put them in a shoebox.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but so now, yeah, so now we've got like a whole bunch hanging there, and then there's some shoe boxes that are tucked away somewhere that have some medals in them
Well,
too. But
see,
yeah.
that's a good system. I've got a problem because I decided, I'd put a few out on the dining room table just for like 6 months or so.
Mhm.
And that was like 18 months ago. And so they're starting to expand over the dining room table, which means you could not possibly have dinner at the table anymore. So I'm trying really hard to throw them in the box, but it's so sad.
Yeah. It really helps if the other person that lives with you or the other people that live with you also appreciate the medals, for,
No.
for their aesthetic qualities, no.
Hey,
Um,
Liz, Alan is going, hey, this is, not what we wanted to
it's
talk
just
about.
we've completely gone off topic.
This is
Okay,
gonna be a
sorry, Alan. This could be a long day.
this is gonna be a chaotic podcast considering you guys are so Cartesian. So, uh
Yeah.
No,
Well,
well, we're not
it's
in the
rare
sense
that
of,
you meet somebody else that, likes things like
yeah.
spreadsheets and
yeah.
coloring
Yeah.
in boxes.
But
I leave my medals on the table and eventually my wife gets fed up with them and she packs them away somewhere
yeah, yeah,
and they're somewhere in the house, but I'm not sure where.
yeah.
Probably not
Well,
all in the same place.
but
Yeah.
we got to talk about Cartesian because was it Descartes who said, or am I getting confused? I think, therefore I am.
Yes.
I
Yes,
don't think
yes.
that's
Oh.
right. I think he was wrong. I think the right phrase is I run, therefore I am.
Ah, there we
Oh.
go.
Well,
Because
that
thinking, it's ephemeral. Running, at least you get somewhere.
Yeah.
true, true.
Okay, my
Yeah.
version's going to be I run, therefore I think. So
Okay.
because you don't get you don't get to understand things unless you take them on a run with you.
Well,
So
neuroscientists
Oh,
say
true.
that exercise is good for cognitive development and for preventing cognitive decline. So your statement
Hmm.
sounds
Yeah.
on target.
Sounds great. Okay, so usually the first question is about
which we
how you
might get
decided.
to.
We haven't actually gotten there yet, but here we go. Here we go. I'm going to put it out there. How did you decide to write this book? Because writing a book is a huge undertaking. So, what happened?
Well, Liz, I enjoy writing. I mean, I was an English major in college way back when, and I like stories. And I also like sharing if something is meaningful.
Hmm.
And so, to some extent,
Sounds
I
cool.
was looking around for meaningful projects that would someday become books. I wrote a book about the long path through run I did, many years ago.
Hmm.
And the writing, it's not only fun to tell the story, but it helps you crystallize or helps me crystallize my ideas. What did I learn from the
Hmm.
experience? What would be relevant to other people? And so as soon as I started the grid, I was like, this is super meaningful. It's super important. At the time, I was like, this is the most important project in my life. So I knew eventually it was going to be something to write about. And, as a result, I kept notes when I would come back from hikes or runs, I would, just write down some notes in my blog or whatever. So I knew it was going to be meaningful and important and worth sharing.
To the uninitiated, I guess before we get too far, we should probably clarify what is the grid.
Hmm.
So the grid is a peak bagging project, which means climbing, a mountain. And typically in the Northeast, the mountains are not, necessarily technical. You don't need ropes. They're usually just
Hmm.
hikes. In some cases, they don't necessarily have trails, so you may have to find your way to the summit. Um, but in most of the mountain ranges in the Northeast, the Catskills, the Dacks, New Hampshire, Vermont, there are lists of official high peaks that, somebody picked out. And that's the basic entry level peak bagging exercise. And what you're doing is you're going out and visiting mountains on a list that other people have come up with because, it's sort of socially meaningful. Other people have done this, other people have found it meaningful, so I'm going to do it too. I'm going to follow in their footsteps. The grid is the next level version of this. It requires you to do those same mountains wherever you happen to be. In the Catskills, there are 35 high peaks. But to complete the grid, you have to do them in each month of the year. So it ends up not being, like an ultra marathon type project. It doesn't require any particular strength or speed, just the ability to hike or if you run or crawl or walk up to the top of a mountain. But for the Catskills, that's 420 peaks. So it's a big project. And just to be clear, you don't have to do that in a single year. You can do it over many, many years. But the for your listeners, the reason it was, the reason it was so interesting to me, it was an alternate structure, if you will, because I was at that
Hmm.
time struggling with injuries. So as much as I liked racing and whether it was a 5K or an ultra, I was starting to struggle with chronic problems. So this gave me a different kind of goal, one where speed wasn't important, and one where the focus really shifted from just covering the miles to what could you see and learn about the mountains, because you're going to really learn them well with that quantity of climbs, and you're going to learn about yourself. And so I call these kinds of projects almost like pilgrimages with the difference that you're not necessarily, leaving home for 6 months or a year or whatever. You can sort of fit them into weekends and other things, but over this period of time, you do something big that changes you. So that's how I would position this kind of project.
And this project, I mean, this was something that, like, you're not the only one that's ever done this. You heard about this from another runner, and I think is there an FKT for this one?
Well, there's not an FKT for the grid per se, because it would be hard to measure, although people have done grids in 1 year. So that's
Oh,
fast. That's a
wow.
lot of
Okay.
climbs in 1 year. And that's great, but you don't have to do it that way. So,
Okay.
but yeah, I heard about it. I'm the 33rd person to have completed the grid in the Catskills, and I did
Wow.
hear about it from some other runners and hikers because it's frankly it's a little bit obscure, right? It's this strange project that only the
Yeah,
people who are super focused on
yeah.
the mountains would even have heard about it, and I just heard about it accidentally.
Hmm.
By the way, I'm not a
While being
believer.
while being in the mountains.
Exactly. I'm no longer a believer in coincidences. I mean, not like, there's somebody pulling, strings on us and we're just dancing around,
Yeah.
but things happen for a reason. So I found out about it sort of accidentally, but I found out about it at the right time in my life and was able to then
Uh,
go out and do it.
what's the saying? When the student is ready, the teacher will appear.
Yeah, and I like to talk about the mountains as being teachers.
And you describes a couple of people as being, your, I don't know, your enablers.
Yes, my
Your,
Yeah.
catalyst. Like yes,
Yeah.
like Mike. And by the way, you mentioned FKT. So Mike Sudi was the fellow I ran into and first
yeah.
heard about the grid. And what a crazy coincidence! I was trying to do an FKT for doing all the Catskills at once. That's called Diratissima. It's 135 miles with like 40,000 feet of gain, and you
Hmm.
just do the whole list at once, and I sort of blew up on it. But I ran into him, and he was finishing the grid just coincidentally. He had a little banner on his backpack: 35 times 12 equals 420, and I was like,
Wow.
what does that mean? And he explained
Hmm.
it, and I didn't actually understand what he meant. But Mike did go on to successfully set the new FKT for that Catskills Duratissima. He's a very, very talented trail runner and bushwhacker because in the Catskills, many of the mountains don't have trails. So you have to find your way through the forest. And in the forest, in the Catskills, the forests are thick and the
Hmm.
terrain is
Yeah.
rugged. It's not like the Alps. It's not 12,000 feet, but it's a mess out there.
You actually seem to enjoy that, though. I feel like you
Well,
enjoyed that. You like looked for the bushwhacking opportunities.
there's type 1 fun, and
Yeah.
then there's type 2 fun, and bushwhacking,
Yeah.
especially barefoot, can be type 3 fun.
Do you take caffeine when you run? Lots of people do because it's in gels and stuff. And caffeine's legal and it's been proven to work. There's actual science that shows that it improves your endurance running performance.
And there's anecdotal data from when you have your coffee in the morning and you go for a workout versus when you forgot to have your coffee or you didn't have time and you went for a workout and it was terrible.
And the trouble with coffee is there's a lot of liquid just to get your caffeine dose.
Yeah, so then you have to stop for the bathroom mid-workout. Very impractical. Which is where Caffeine Bullet comes in.
What's caffeine bullet, Liz?
It's a caffeine supplement. It's wrapped up like in a candy. So, and it tastes like candy. And you can get 100 milligrams or 85 milligrams, which is about a cup of coffee, but without the liquid.
So we've tried the mint flavor and the chocolate orange flavor, and they're both pretty yummy.
If you want to try them for yourself, we do have a 20% off discount code. So go to the link in the show notes and you can check out what Caffeine Bullet is and get your 20% discount.
Pretty generous.
It is pretty generous.
And we'll get a small benefit, so you're helping out the
Speaking of which, back to the podcast. Okay. It's got its own category.
it was fascinating reading actually when you decided like, oh, I'm a good sort of endurance trail runner. I'll get onto this Catskill um, FKT, and then you realize there are no trails, and like the basically the the skills that you're going to need to go at the speed that you need to go have far exceeded your current ability, and it was kind of fun to hear that, to see that in the book, to read about it, that you go, okay, well, you jogging along a trail and then you get good at jogging along trails. No, there, there are no trails in some spots, and you need to navigate and you need to get it right. Otherwise, you're going to lose time. And some of the terrain, you can't move anywhere near the sort of speed that you need to move at without, as Liam Neeson would say, a particular set of skills that originally when you first started you didn't seem to have.
Well, those would be called magic skills,
Yes,
or magic
bush
spells.
magic.
But by the way, I was a U.S. Army Ranger briefly, and as an infantry officer, I had extensive training in land
Hmm.
navigation, map and compass, and in places that are also not easy, like the mountains of Georgia and and the tangles of the coastal mountains in California. But I got out into the Catskills. I remember the first time I tried to bushwhack a peak, and I had a GPS. And it was November, the leaves were down. I was wearing, a thick Gore-Tex shell, and I got into this mess of fir and spruce, these little Christmas trees. Thoreau
Yeah,
encountered them in
yeah,
Maine and called them devilish trees because, their branches interlock. That's
yeah,
how they withstand the wind and the snow, by the way.
yeah,
And you
Oh,
guys in Canada have extensive boreal
yeah.
forests
yeah,
full
we've
of
got
this
lots of
stuff.
those.
And I got stuck in this stuff. I couldn't move. And I was looking at the GPS and I'm like, I've spent a half an hour and I've made it 100 yards. I need a
Oh my
chainsaw.
goodness.
and you're not supposed to bring chainsaws up there and just, chop your way through.
Yeah.
So here's the crazy thing. So today, I just move right through that stuff. And you know what it is? It's cognitive load is the right way to think about it. You just have to pause and let the tension drop, and then you start to see the lines around the trees. It's like, don't go through those branches, just go around. But as you get the experience, you can find your way through this stuff. But for all the experience I had in the Army, it was quite difficult when I first showed up. And Alan, when I was first trying to go after that record, I was discovering that it was a super challenge to move through this thick terrain at the speeds that I needed to do. And I was never as good as Mike Sudi or Cave Dog, who are real masters of this stuff.
So along the way, you seem to really get inspired by this idea of minimalism. It seemed to be, I guess it just seemed to fit at the time because you were kind of injured. So I guess you were looking for something different to do. And you got inspired by minimalism and you started, running barefoot, trying to go as light as possible. What was it that you loved so much about this idea of minimalism? Because you did stick with it, although throughout the book you get a bit, I guess, a bit more strategic about how you use it because, you find out that like pure minimalism is not always the right way to go through the mountains, like especially in winter when you should actually have a few layers, maybe a sleeping bag.
Yeah, and it would help to wear shoes sometimes.
It helps to
Yeah,
wear shoes
yeah.
sometimes, yeah. But you still seem to kind of love this idea of just not not having anything extra.
So I think the most direct answer, well, there's two answers. One is intellectually, we all have to be minimalist to some degree. And I learned that in the Army. I was in the 7th Infantry Division Light, and light infantry was this radical concept back in the day, in super rough terrain, heavy forces can't operate. You need to send soldiers with less gear who can move on their feet. And if they're going to have less gear, they need to be more highly trained and stronger, better
Mhm.
leadership skills. So there's this trade-off, and we always have to make this trade-off in life about technology and gear versus human strengths, our innate human strengths. So that was the intellectual background, but I think the real emotional drive for minimalism is the hunger for intensity. And I think I love it when people talk about, well, yeah, I run to maximize longevity. No, no, nobody does that. We run for the intensity, right? We love the intensity, right? Whether it's that 5K and you're all out or a longer run, or it's the multi-day race that you guys were doing, and you're like, well, the aches and pains start to accumulate. You're like, how do I make it through this? Because that intensity is how we learn, right? And it's that full mind body engagement that comes from stepping up to some kind of challenge. So, I think in the injured state, I was like, there are other ways to, you know, to drive a training stimulus, if you will. There are other ways to challenge myself. And the last point I'll make too is I think there's this weird sense the mountains call and they say, dude, show us what you can do. And no, no, don't come, here on a motorized electric bike. We don't care about that. Show us what you can do as a person. And so the ability to warm yourself, to go barefoot, to get by without food for periods of time, these are real human capabilities. And the mountains sort of, depending on who you are, they might call on you to rediscover those deep sources of human strength.
Okay, that's a good
As I gave
that's
you
a
three
good
answers.
explanation. I like those answers though because
Which
it
one,
kind of
which one
brings
did you, which one did you like the most, and which one were you shaking your head going, ah, maybe not?
It's
yeah.
it's pretty true that when you're on the trails or when you're on it in in the depths of a marathon, you don't go, "Oh, this really hurts. I'm going to live forever." Uh, you actually you actually think, "This really hurts. It feels like I'm going to live forever, but I'm probably going to die soon." You're certainly not interested in your longevity.
Yeah.
Or it
Yeah.
feels like I'm going so fast. It hurts so much. I hope this is worth it on the clock at the end.
or tomorrow this will seem like fun
Yeah.
when it's finished. Um,
Oh yeah,
It's
you get to the
interesting how
finish
that is.
line, right? You get to the
Yeah.
finish line, and Liz, I was running a road race. It was a 5K, and I there was this guy ahead of me, and I was like, he looks like my age group, so I got to beat him. And I was running so hard, I was practically in tears, like with tears running down my face. It hurt so much. I couldn't quite. I
Yes.
was 10 seconds behind him, but I couldn't quite catch him. But you know, when you push yourself, you learn, right? You learn who you are.
mm,
You put your hands on the throttle and the control stick of yourself, and you're like, huh, this is what happens when I push the throttle all the way forward. And
Yeah.
then you come back to life, and life throws some curveballs at you sometimes, and you're like, okay, this is now I'm back into a high stress regime, and I know how to operate that throttle and how far I can push it, and I'm just going to deal with these other challenges I have. But at least I have that little bit of confidence from having taken myself out on the track or the into the mountains and you know gotten used to operating myself.
why the Catskills? Is it just coincidence that you happen to live around there?
Yes. Yes. And you know what I like to say? People often get in arguments. What are the most beautiful mountains? What are the best mountains? And my answer is always the
Mm,
best mountains are the ones you
ones
can
you can
get
get
to.
into.
Hmm.
Yeah. Um, th- so are the well, first of all, there are 35 peaks, not 33, because I was looking around the internet and there was some of it was referring to 33 peaks, but you're talking about 35.
Yeah,
Is that
historically there've
true?
been 35, and then there are private landowners who decided to restrict access.
Ah, okay.
So it went to 33, but some people, so they found a couple more mountains uh, to
To add
stand
back
in
in.
for the two. So it sort of depends who you talk to.
And how do the 35 peaks qualify?
Well, the old rule was there are 35 peaks that are over 3,500 feet, which
Okay.
is a beautiful coincidence.
Yes.
That was it.
Oh,
Somebody back in the 60s, you know, went through the maps and counted them up. In the Adirondacks, there are 46 high peaks that are 4,000 feet. In New Hampshire, 48 that are 4,000 feet. Um, and so people, you know, all
Okay.
this stuff is arbitrary, but somebody makes a list and then somebody else is like, cool, what that person did is cool, and I want to do it too. And that's how these kinds of
Yeah.
structures, they're all arbitrary. Like, you know, 26.2 is arbitrary, but
Yeah, you only need
yeah.
a critical mass of
yeah,
lunatics,
yeah,
basically. Yeah.
of which there's no shortage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems that way. And so at the top of every peak, is there a log so that you can say Ken was here certain date on the
In
logbook?
in the Catskills, there are logs on the trailless peaks. So there are
Okay.
canisters nailed to the trees, and inside is a little notebook in a plastic bag.
On the trailless ones, not on,
Right.
but the ones that have trails, there's
They
no
don't,
log. Oh, that's
yeah.
interesting. Oh, is there a reason for that? Is that because they assume, well, it's easy enough to get to the peak, no one's gonna not go to the peak?
Yes, I think that's right.
Hmm.
And in theory, people are going, you know, they could check when you apply for membership, they could, in theory, go back and check the notebooks to see if you'd actually been to the trailless peaks when you said you had been.
To
Ah.
get officially recognized as being a gridder, so having done all these peaks, do you have to submit something to somebody?
Well,
Or is this a foreign concept? Just
no,
to
no,
have my
no.
mind around it properly.
Now, here's the funny thing. There are two organizations that track Catskills grids. One is the Catskill Mountain Club, and the other is a group called Hikers Anonymous. Uh, so I have different
That sounds like Fight
numbers.
Club. Hikers Anonymous. Sounds
It
like
does a
Fight
little bit.
Club.
I don't know. They don't identify who's in charge of it, but they have
Mm.
detailed documentation of completions. By the way, there's some people who have done 5 or 6 grids. So there are some
Wow.
people for whom this is, um, and one person I'm thinking of would describe, who has, I think, 5 grids, he would describe this as a spiritual practice. There's a fellow in the Adirondacks who just completed his 100th round of the 46 high peaks. So that's 4,600 climbs in the Adirondacks.
Wow, that's
So some
impressive.
people focus on this kind of activity as their life's practice. Both people I'm talking about are in their 70s. So
Yeah,
they, it takes a
it's
lot of
been
time
going
to
for a while.
accumulate that number of
So
peaks.
so the Catskills has a grid, but this is not a unique thing to the Catskills.
You could do a grid anywhere. You could do it in the Himalayas. Now that would be a challenge.
Yeah.
The peaks are
Yeah.
quite a bit
In
higher, I
theory,
think.
well, people talk about doing the highest 10 peaks or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But
I don't know if
okay.
in the Himalayas you can access the peaks in every month of
I
the
wonder
year.
if
So
I wonder if the Laurentian Mountains in Quebec, which are the nearest sort of range to where we live, I wonder if they have a grid.
I guess we'll have to look it up. Or maybe we have a listener that could tell us. I don't know. We'll find out.
Yeah. So it's not even an American thing.
doesn't have to
It's
be. It's just a concept. Um, so now I want to come visit Montreal and go see these. Did you call them the Laurentian
Laurentian
Mountains?
Mountains. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah,
It's
so you have to drive a little bit north of Montreal, but
They're really not very high at all, though. Are they now?
that's
Not
okay.
too
I
high.
have
no.
my
There's
my
ski
new
hills.
ski hills. My new project is to climb 1,000 mountains barefoot. Um, and I have done a small number of 14ers, so 14,000 peaks,
Yeah,
foot
in
peaks
Colorado.
in Colorado and California. But the smallest peak I've done is 482 feet. And so
Huh.
I've developed an appreciation for small mountains. As long as it's called a mountain and somebody said this speaks mountain to me, there are
Hmm.
lovely grass-covered knolls, little mountains in Harriman State Park, a little bit south of where I am. And it's just fun to get out. I mean, part of my project, part of why I do this is, like everybody else, I spend a lot of time sitting in front of a laptop. That won't surprise you.
Hmm.
And starting in my 50s, I began to feel sort of stale with endless conference calls. I wrote about that in the book and spreadsheets, and it's great. I mean, I love my work and I'm proud of what I do, but it's such a narrow sliver of the mind. It's all left brain type calculations. And what about the rest of me? So I
Yeah.
Hmm.
feel a very strong need, as I'm sure we all do, and all your listeners too, to get out on the weekends and do serious time, whether it's a race, running, or just hiking in the mountains. And that's a challenge. I'm trying to find the balance in my life between running and hiking. And then there's this other stuff I got to do too, but I need a quantity of that activity to balance out the other stuff for
Yeah,
sure.
and also the thing is, so with all these mountains that you were climbing in all the different seasons and all times of the day as well. 'Cause sometimes it was dark and you would like sleep outdoors and things like that. So I mean, what did your family think of like did they worry that you might not come home or was there any of that? Because like the mountains have some dangers. I mean, we mentioned bears at the beginning, but I mean, there are other things. Maybe you want to tell the listeners because probably right now there's somebody that you just inspired to go and climb all these mountains. So before they just run out the door, how about you tell them like what kind of things they should worry about before going
By
out?
the way, this is a great use. Your listeners should buy my book, Chasing the Grid, and then give it as a Christmas present to like the crazy people in your life. Because then first of all, they might run off into the mountains and disappear for a year or two, and you're like, "Wow, at least I get a break from all this, something's wrong with the world." And and then when they come back, they might be really different, and you'll be like, "Damn, that's look what I did." So, a couple of things. Don't mention to your listeners. Let's not get into the Christmas scene. But I'll share the philosophy, which I learned from business travel. Um, Put on your mask first before attempting to help somebody else. That's the oxygen mask.
Hmm.
Yes.
In other
In the plane.
words,
Yeah.
you and I, we've got to be squared away. I'm not going to be helpful to other people if I'm not squared away myself. And so, some people don't need any time in nature. Others of us need more. And so if that's who I am, that's what I've got to do. And if I do that, then I can come back and do things for family and other people. But, I mean, I tried to, while doing the grid. And by the way, at that point, I was an empty nester.
Okay.
So less responsibilities, right?
That
Um,
helps.
and it,
Yeah.
and there's a time to run, and there's a time to focus on family and work, right? And so, that and just, when when my daughter graduated from college, that was not a time to be out in the mountains, right? So you put the mountains aside for the things that matter, but what you don't put them aside for is just sitting around. You don't put them aside for people who feel uncomfortable that you have a passion in a project
Hmm.
and they just don't want that. So there can be negative people in the world, and no disrespect to them, but my philosophy, and it's not mine, it's everybody's philosophy. You got to be yourself. You got to do what you need to do.
Yeah. I guess you're just a
Yeah.
very extreme version of Liz and I.
Yeah.
Basically, we need to get out and run.
Yeah.
I mean,
But
my
this
my
is,
wife will tell me to go and run.
Uh-huh. What?
Rather than, hey, can you come and help me, cook a meal? She'll say, if you haven't been running for a few days, you're not much fun to live with. So
Right.
better that you do that and that you are fun to live with. Um,
Yeah, and once you take care of yourself, then you can say, "Hey, I've taken care of myself. Now let me go help my wife by cooking a dinner with her, and that's going to be fun."
that's not happening.
Uh, I used to do the dishes. That was my more of my
Yeah,
contribution,
maybe that's what I
and
would
set
do.
the table. But once you've taken care of yourself, you have the energy and joy to be positive force in other people's lives. I'm a big believer in that. And by the way, I like to remind people, and you guys saw it in the book, of Thoreau's warning that he said the majority of men live lives, and I think this was 19th century, he meant the majority of men and women
mhm.
live lives of quiet desperation. And to me, that would be people who don't run. And all kidding aside, because there are other ways to be a human besides running,
Hmm.
but it's people who are caught in a low energy state because they don't have the personal goals that they need to have, and they're not making traction towards those goals because the goals create the energy, whatever they happen to be, right? And you guys know
Mhm.
that because you get fired up about whatever run it is. And it creates so much energy, and then you have a high energy life and you can do your thing and you can help other people too.
Yeah, you know what? I've witnessed just the benefits of having like those goals and passions that you like to do outside of, all your obligations, like, having an income and all that stuff. And they weren't necessarily runners, but they had
Hmm.
those goals and passions. And so I think like for us it's running, but it doesn't have to be running. I think like it could be something else. Um, because I've seen it, I see perfect like
I've got
I
a
have
friend
friends.
who's a swimmer and I'm like, why do you do
Why
that?
would you do that?
Yeah, you could drown.
I'm terrible. I try to swim and I barely make it to the other side, but he's really good at it. So
Yeah. I
yeah,
mean,
for
all
sure.
kidding aside, I think there's something to be said, like people should exercise. So you should have some kind of exercise in your life. But I mean, I have a friend that loves to sew and she
Hmm.
sews for craft fairs and all kinds of
Hmm.
things. And she makes things that are useful for small children and elderly. So she was making for a while these little hooded
Uh-huh.
towels with like little bunny ears and things. And she like basically was selling them at cost because she was not really making profit or anything, but she absolutely just loved to make these things and go and see
Yeah.
people at the fair and give them this thing that
Hmm.
they found super useful. And that was her joy and her passion project. Like, and she had a job outside of that. This is
Mhm.
what she would do. And for her, like there was just that's not a physical activity thing at all, but it's like
Right.
this thing that she found so much joy from. So, I mean, I don't know, like our listeners are definitely runners, so they're definitely like, why would you do that? Like everyone should run and I think the world is a better place with more runners in it for sure, 100%. But I've actually witnessed people that do have a passion for something else and
Yeah.
seem just as happy, as we do. Well, I don't know. I think we're probably more happy, but
I
I'm
think,
biased.
as as very active runners, we kind of understand that. But when I look at the sort of things that you get involved with, Ken, and the distances are one thing, and I think as runners, we can deal with almost any number in our heads in terms of distance. But when I think about maybe you going through a set of mountains in winter with dubious weather conditions, snow on the ground, no trail, night's falling, there are bears around, and you're doing
Here
this,
we go back to the Bears.
and you're doing this barefoot
Well, not barefoot
barefoot
in the
for fun,
not
or
barefoot in the
shirt or
snow. Not
shirtless or
barefoot in the snow.
shirtless.
It may
Shirtless
be
was another
shirtless.
thing
Yeah.
you get, but there you go. Then, my understanding of the whole thing kind of disappears a little bit. I think, are you are you crazy, or you just
Well,
I have you have you
that would be
started
one
off being
answer.
a I guess some people start they run a 5K and then they run a 10K and a half marathon and a marathon and then they want to go and do ultra runs.
Yeah.
Is this
That's how it happens,
this
actually.
this
The
is
true
just your
story
Yeah.
right
version,
there.
but you've
Yeah.
got to a
Yeah.
point where ultra runs, double ultra runs, treble
So
ultra runs, and
what
now
I would
without shoes.
I would say it's the same. It's like, yeah, the 5K, and I did that 5K, 10K, half marathon, marathon, and then one day I discovered ultra marathons, and I was like, oh my God, I'm going to do 30 miles. And then I closed my eyes and did 50, came in last place. But the whole thing was a bonk. I couldn't even talk. I got into the finish and they were cleaning
Yeah,
up the last scraps of the
that's kind
barbecue
of that's
chicken.
kind of where I'm at now.
And then I wasn't going to jump to 100, so I had to do 60, 100K and then a 70. And then a friend was like, Ken, let's do 100. I'm like, 100? I'm like, okay, if you do it, I'll do it. And I went and he didn't show up. So that was my first 100. But it's the same thing, except this it's like a tree, right? It's a tree that's growing. But I guess my experience is that there are branches. So it doesn't have to be just distance. It doesn't have to be just speed because that
True.
can eventually blow you up. And that's what I did to myself in the
Yeah.
story, right?
Hmm.
You have more degrees of freedom. So you can take, and what we're talking about is the passion, the excitement, and you can take it in different directions. Like there are people who do, obstacle races, right? I haven't
Hmm.
done that, or orienteering races. So there's just a lot of things you
Yeah.
can, or they do beer runs, right? So
Yeah.
there's all sorts of different things you can do. And some of this has been a surprise to me. So like the barefoot, I wasn't like, some conscious decision to be a weird barefoot person. Um, I read Chris McDougall's book and he
Yeah.
said, hey, barefoot might be helpful in mitigating
Hmm.
injuries, help you recover natural alignment. And I'm like, you know what? I'm
Yeah.
starting to deal with injuries. So I ought to experiment with this. So that may be what's different about me from others is that I'm more willing to experiment. I'm more willing to follow the logic out further. Um, and actually, if you read in the book, you met my inner demon. So that's my inner
Hmm.
demon is a scout, the spirit of a long
Yes.
dead scout and who's mad that he can't run anymore, which was where did that come from? But
Yeah.
but to be a scout means that I'm going to go out further,
And break the
uh,
terrain,
from,
basically.
right away from the main force and scan and recon, the flanks and the distance and go out in the distances and bring back a report. That's sort of where my personality is. So back to barefoot. By the way, the surprise with barefoot was how much fun it is. And so, not a conscious decision, but today I hardly wear shoes at all, much to the amusement of my friends. And I don't like to run in
Yeah.
shoes at all unless I have to. Um, but there are different directions in life that we can go. And my job apparently is to go out on some of those directions and bring back a report. And I'll take some risk to do that. That's part of my job. I'm not going to go up to a bear and pet it and feed it and things
Yeah.
Okay,
like
good.
that.
Yeah.
Because I would be
If
worried about you then.
if
Yeah.
I see a
Measured risk.
bear, I'm gonna be like, hey
Yeah.
bear,
Yeah.
I'm just chilling. Have a nice day. Um, the or I might sing a song
But at the same
so
time,
it knows I'm
Yes.
there.
but you
But
don't
Yeah.
you don't turn around when you see like fresh bear tracks either. It seems like.
no, but I turn around. I went out to do, by the way, you don't there are bold ultra runners and there are old ultra runners, but there aren't any bold old ultra runners. So I went out to do a we were talking about people who do swimming, right? These weird people. So I'm like, I can do that too. Because I used to do triathlons a long time ago. And so I pulled my wetsuit out of the closet, hadn't worn it for 20 years, took it to the pool to make sure it wasn't going to fall apart. And I showed up at this open water swim, which I had signed up for and actually been training over the winter for. And I got into the water and it was cold and it was brown and it was salty. And I had the tail end of a little cold. So I was coughing up a little bit of phlegm. And I was like, no, no. So I got right back out.
Oh,
I got to keep the t-shirt, but I get a
okay.
medal for my collection. And it's back to that cognitive load concept. I was thinking ahead to being out in the middle of the river and not being, used to these conditions, despite having, splashed around in the pool. So I like to say at this point with enough experience, I will pull the abort lever quickly and for the right reasons. And actually, in the book, I talk about the attempt to do the FKT,
Hmm.
and I'm out after like I think it was 4 days moving with like an hour an hour of sleep, and I give myself credit for making. I don't want to spoiler alert. I don't, making the decision to abort was the good judgment call. As I was creeping through the forest in a state of complete hallucination.
Yeah, that
I,
seems to be an evolution in your thinking because initially, like I think there was a quote in the book that you were saying, "Try hard, try harder,"
Right,
and I
right.
was like, "Oh boy."
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Well,
But it really changed. Like it seems like you kind of evolved
no,
throughout
Yeah.
your.
no, no,
Oh,
no. But yes, because running when you're young is different from when you're old. And it's the same too, because like I said, we're trying to learn, right? We're trying to push ourselves and learn and stay active. But when you're young, you're trying to find out where those limits really are, and you don't know. And you're like,
hmm,
wow, I just ran 50 miles. I didn't know anybody could do that. I mean, this would be like 20 years ago.
yeah.
Now everybody knows. But as you
There's
get older,
internet for that now, but
yeah,
yeah, I
yeah.
get it.
As you get older, it's like, okay, I know the limits. Now I need to keep fighting with them. I can't let them just move in on me because they're going to eventually, right? But I need to be fighting them and
Hmm.
I need to be knowing, where they are, right? And if I'm a minute slower in a 5K, God forbid, this year than last year, can I push that back at least by 30 seconds? I can't just accept that. But otherwise, when you're older, obviously you're slower to heal. There's higher risk, easier to injure yourself. So it's a different mentality. The try hard, try harder is now focused on control. So I like to say, I thought about this when you guys were interviewing Matt Fitzgerald. Instead of high intensity interval training, now I do controlled intensity interval training. And it may be high intensity, but each repeat is going to be very specific as to the target. And I'm thinking about how to, drive that training stimulus without breaking something, right? Because,
Hmm.
as you get older, that's going to slow you down big time. It's going to take longer to heal, etc. So
So
control.
you just want to not be injured is like, yeah, basically
Well, I
priority
mean,
number one.
you have to be injured, right? The way to not be injured is to sit on the sofa and never leave it. But so you have to
Actually, you can
have,
get injured like that
Yeah.
too, but it's different.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, my basic approach is do something until you get injured and then step back from that. But then it's too late, of course.
right, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's hard.
Still,
It's so hard because
yeah.
there's no answer. All the
Hmm.
scientists and experts you can say, is this niggle in my knee a problem, or should I keep going? They don't. There's no way to
Yeah,
know.
nobody
Yeah,
really
yeah.
knows. You kind of have to,
But the answer
yeah,
is keep going.
yeah.
That's
Um,
that's that's my answer.
It is sometimes, but so the try hard. One of the lessons I think though is yes, keep trying hard, but trying hard doesn't mean running at 100%. It could be staying in control at 100%, right? So
mhm.
put the effort into control, not so much as to the always going for the all out um, muscular contraction, so to speak. I did I signed up for the Flying Pigs marathon in Cincinnati, and I was looking forward to it because I love pigs, and I have family out there. I was going to see them, and the week before I did a 5 mile, and I was like, well, that's a little bit of risk, but um, I've done a lot of races. Getting injured in a race is actually pretty rare, so I did the 5 mile and won my
Hmm.
age group, and at mile 3, pulled my hamstring.
Oh
I still won.
no.
It was a slow group, so I showed up a week later, and I was like, the goal is only to complete it
Yeah.
and walk every step of the uphills and trot slowly on the flats. And so I was able to complete it, but that's control,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
to some extent what you're applying is the ultra realist approach, which is let's not throw the whole thing away. Let's take an assessment
Yeah,
of exactly what's happening to me. Okay, and now let's reposition according to that assessment in a
yeah,
realistic, hyper realistic fashion. You don't go, well, I pulled my hamstring, so I just have to drop out.
I'll go
You
sit
go,
on the
okay.
couch for 3 weeks.
You go, okay, well, how bad is it, and how much can I tolerate, and am I damaging myself? And if I keep going, or if I do X, and Matt Fitzgerald actually has a book called The Comeback Quotient, where he
mhm,
talks about the people who are high performers are extremely realistic about what is actually happening to them. And therefore, they can dose exactly what they need right to the limit of what's useful without going to a point where it becomes a negative consequence. So that's pretty
So,
cool.
yeah. Well
mhm.
said, Alan.
So, one of the other things that I guess you kind of had to deal with in the mountains, or maybe it was, the mountains made you come face to face with it more often, was you talk a lot about this in the book about feeling frustrated when things don't advance as planned or as you like or fast enough or whatever the case is. But you seem to kind of like stay motivated and you seem to have sort of worked through that and become a little bit more I guess aware of it and just like able to deal with I guess when things don't work out the way you want them to. So I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit and I don't know what you learned in that respect and what kind of helped you sort of overcome that. Or maybe not completely overcome it, but at least get better at limiting your frustration.
Yeah, well, it was this inner demon, the scout I was talking about, and it likes to go fast because it's the spirit of a scout who can no longer run and he's mad and wants to run and wants me to be running. And so if I'm going fast, he's cool. But if I start to slow down, he gets bored and then frustrated and then furious. And actually, I finally came sort of face to face with the spirit and I just said, please just shut up. I didn't actually say that. I was going to say that, and then I was like, I got super sarcastic. I was like, because we were going up Halkett Mountain and it was snowy and it's like, and I was going really slow in snowshoes and the inner demon was getting frustrated. I was like, what exactly would you like me to do? Do you have any suggestions? And of course it didn't. And I've never heard from it since because it was sort of useless. This is sort of a metaphor. Your listeners are going, what? Well, you'll have to read to find out, but it's sort of a metaphor for the energy of life. We all have a lot of energy and we all go racing through life. And it can be at the 5K where you're running so hard you're in tears, or it can be pushing yourself through the mountains on whatever, or it can be going to work or dropping the kids off or doing the shopping, right? And the question is, how do you manage this energy? And one of the little voices in my head as I was going through this project said, Posner, you need to work on patience. Now, one way to work on patience is to take some pills. The other way to work on patience is to go barefoot in the mountains. And as a runner, you're used to going whatever pace, but 5 or 6 miles an hour or something. And going barefoot in the mountains on a steep slope with, beach branches in your face, and every rock you step on is like tilting and it's
Mm-hmm.
covered in moss that could slip off. And you're going like a mile an hour or not even that. And you're like, I just, I'm used to going fast. I'm a runner.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
And it's hard to go slow. It's hard to go slow. And so somewhere deep down, I knew that I needed to be better at going slow, more patient, and this is all about being in control of yourself. So I think being in the mountains, it triggers, some of the underlying good sense we all, hopefully come packaged with, and the ability and not having enough control. Parts of the brain say, dude, you're going too fast. You need to slow down. You need to get in control. You need to make sure you're going the right place and not just buzzing around in circles. So I think that and caffeine. I'm not,
Yeah.
I'm very patient until I have my first cup of espresso and then I'm like, let's go.
Okay. Yeah, caffeine will do that too.
It might.
With respect to what you've just said, is it a feature of going alone? Because if you go with a group or a couple of friends, you tend to then get into trying to go at their pace, or they're trying to go at your pace, or you're distracted. Is
Are you
going
having
on
a
your
conversation?
does going on your own deliver some things to you in terms of learnings that you don't get otherwise?
For sure. And I love my friends and, going hiking and running with folks, but that's a different activity. It's a social activity.
Okay.
And social activities are important and it's who we are. But I think that part of the challenge for modern people, and I'm going to quote Freud here, um, is there are so many voices screaming at us, telling us what to do. And Freud came up with the idea of the superego or the guilty conscious, and that's how we internalize all these voices. And it can be the priests, the media, the government, and your friends and family all telling you, hey, this is, this is what you should believe in. This is how you should dress. This is who you should vote for. This is the kind of toothpaste you should use. Um, when you're by yourself in the mountains, you have an opportunity for some of that noise to clear. And you may be able to start perceiving the quiet little voices and the visions that are also part of what it is to be human, but I think they just get, squelched out by the noise. So yes, I think spending time alone in the mountains or in the forests or wherever you go gives you that chance to sort of reconnect. There's a really, really interesting book by a guy named Julian Jaynes. It's about quote unquote primitive people. He's talking about prior to 700 BC. And he said people back then were not really self-conscious the way we are. They tended to make decisions and experience that as, the spirits telling them what to do. And, we all look at cultures where people are closer to nature and, we talk about that connection that feels lost in modern life. I think the connection gets broken in some cases by the noise of all these people telling us what to do, which in primitive societies where you had much smaller groups of people, it wasn't as oppressive. It wasn't as voluminous. The volume wasn't as loud. So absolutely spending some time alone. And, this goes back. I mean, Genghis Khan, the Mongol emperor, he went out into the mountains and for a few days to seek inspiration from Tingri, which is the sky god, the god of the great blue sky, about what to do. And it's creating that sort of space and that quiet that allows us to sort of reconnect with other parts of our mind besides just the conscious calculating part that's dealing with all the noises.
Yeah, it's interesting because I remember w my last job, but before the pandemic, because after the pandemic, everybody started working from home. The office that I worked at was pretty close to home. It was like 6.5 kilometers. So I would run to and from work like twice a week about. Um, and sometimes like after the day of work, because I worked in a like call center environment, so I just
Hmm.
talked to people all day long.
Yep.
After leaving work, like sometimes I would just, start running home. And even if I was, sometimes like my legs were heavy and everything because I'd run to work as well. And then there's like sort of a delay because, like, you were 8 hours sitting at your desk and you don't feel like running home necessarily. But by the time I got to, let's say, like the last kilometer or down the street, I was almost like disappointed that the run was so short
Yeah.
because it's as if like I would have needed an extra. I don't know, an extra 4K of like I don't know, mental time to process because it would just be, I guess, quiet time that was automatically imposed because there was nobody gonna run home with me.
Yeah, I think there's a big question about the balance. Forget the balance between running and work and et cetera, the balance of mental activity that we have, right? And I have a relative who, was in the hospital, and afterwards she was talking about what sent her there. It was the media. She gets very upset watching the news. And I see other people who seem to be really upset. And it's understandable. We all have opinions, but you need to balance that with something. There's an interesting little book called The Barefoot Manifesto by Bunny Fitzgerald. And she talks about the sensation of going barefoot and how she used to believe that reading and studying was the right way to figure out her way through life. And one day she just got the idea to go barefoot, and she discovered the sensations were sort of rebalancing her mind and helping her understand, no, you can't study and read your way to the perfect answer on everything or even anything. You need to be operating yourself with a certain amount of physical sensation, whether it's running or just walking barefoot. Um, uh, if you don't have that, you may lose control and you may get sick, is the risk. And I
Yeah.
see that more. I see that I'm starting to notice that. I think social people have documented the social media has created, mental health issues, particularly for young folks. And so
Yeah.
that needs to be balanced out somehow.
Yeah, and we talk about going alone, but in fact, you see people, particularly younger people, I guess, who are alone, maybe walking down the street, but they're on their phone.
Yeah.
They're looking at their phone. They're deliberately unaloning themselves all the time
Hmm.
through their devices.
Yeah, the devices are dangerous, just like food is dangerous. They're engineered to be engaging and distracting, and they have a lot of value, but the value may not be for the you, maybe for the marketers and the advertisers and the people who are trying to influence you. So, I mean, people talk a lot about flow state, right? And
Yep.
you're on the phone, you're on flow state, but that doesn't mean it's productive. And so you have to make an effort to put the phone away. And so now we're back to effort. How do you learn to make an effort? Well, by running. or by swimming, or
Or by swimming,
by
I
God
weights
forbid.
guess, if
or
you
weights
really
or
want to
God
do
something.
that.
forbid. Yeah.
But you got to actually move the phone away from you. It takes
Yeah.
effort, and so part of what I think, whatever your athletic practice is, you're teaching yourself how to make an effort so you can be in control of yourself and achieve personal agency. Because if you don't have personal agency, if everybody's right and we have one life to live and not, nine like a cat or whatever, then it's a shame if you live it on behalf of other people and don't do what you needed to do or wanted to do. And so it takes effort, and that effort starts with putting the phone down and putting the donut down. There's a lot of things you got to put down.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm conscious of the time, but there's one more topic that I don't know. I'd like maybe for the listeners to hear you talk about because at the end of the book you mention opportunity cost. Specifically the opportunity cost of having completed the grid, because
Mhm.
having completed the grid means you were all these hours like out there in the mountains, as opposed to maybe like focusing on I don't know, your work or your family or whatever else you have. And you don't regret that choice, like you mentioned that in the book, but I think it's like a real concern because you hear a lot about this when especially I think mothers, they have like mom guilt. They want to pursue their own goals,
Right.
like train for a marathon, but they're like, oh, it's all those hours that I'm not going to be with my kids, and they have like a lot of guilt about that. So maybe you can speak to that a little bit, like yes, there's opportunity cost, but is it worth it? Or how do you
Yeah,
know it's worth it?
yeah, and obviously I can't speak to to mom guilt from personal experience, but I think I get it, and I think because moms pay really close attention to kids, kids do better, and dads maybe don't have the this same focus. Obviously, some dads do,
Yeah.
and some moms,
But I mean, for
so
dads, it could be something as well, instead of, I don't know, planning a vacation with their family, they plan a vacation around an event that they want to do, and the family comes along, and maybe they feel guilty about that. I mean, I don't know. Like, I'm not a dad. I'm not even a mom, but like, I'm not a guy, obviously. So I don't know, but I'm sure that there's the equivalent in the
so so
male
here's my
space.
my best answer. And by the way, for some mom, the best answer, the right answer is not to do the grid. It's to do something else so they can keep an eye on their kids. And that's cool. And that's probably great for the kids. And some moms are different. And I met a young woman down in Fort Benning, and she was a strong looking young woman, but she just looked me in the eye, straight in the eye, big smile on her face, just a great young lady. And she signed up to go to infantry officer school and then ranger school. But she might be, she didn't seem to be a mom. Maybe she would feel different if she was a mom. But here's what I would say. I believe in running towards the excitement. We only get one life, and you got to figure out what's really exciting. And it may take time. You or I might be sitting around going, I'm not sure what to do. And then you got to research. And part of the reason I ran the Badwater and the Double is I heard about Badwater and it just caught my attention. And I was like, how do you do that? And it really intrigued me. And there are a lot of folks for whom that would not intrigue them, and they're intrigued by other things. But once you get that interest level, that's where the excitement is. And you only get one life. I would run towards the excitement, whatever that is for you. And it might be your kids, right? It might be your job. Like Elon Musk, does he need to go out and do the grid? Maybe not. He's got
He's
he's
got
got
other big
enough
wants to go to
excitement.
Mars. Yeah.
But I think there's a big category of people. Like there's on the one end, there's the Elon Musk of the world. They don't need our advice on where to find excitement and make money. And on the other side, there's people who are struggling, with illness or poverty or crime or whatever. And we don't go to people like that and say you need to be, training for a 5K or something because they're
Hmm.
they're just trying to survive. But in the middle, There's a lot of people. And these are the people that Thoreau was talking about. And for these people, you have a job, it's probably, paying the rent, but it may not be the most exciting thing in the world. It may be draining. It may be giving you some things, but not other things. And so that's the quietly desperate person. That's the person who might need to say, I want something else in my life, and I've got to figure out what that is. And then I've got to go for it unless I want to stay in this low energy trap. So those are the people I think where these kinds of projects or whatever it is that you do can be really important. And if it's about getting to high energy, there's not going to be an opportunity cost because the opportunity is low energy. So you're putting yourself. I talk in the book about transcendence, and that's one of these, woo-woo words. So I like to define things. So transcendence just means getting to a higher level, right? Being happier or more energetic or something. And for some of us, the grid or something like that is going to be the key to getting to the next level. And for other people, it's going to be something different. But don't stay stuck in the trap. If you're in a trap, you got to get out. You got to take some risk.
That's a good message.
I think that resonates pretty strongly with you, Liz, given where
Yeah.
you are in your
Yeah.
own personal development at the moment with
All right,
job
Liz,
I'm
changes.
right in the
the
middle.
Laurentian Mountains.
The Laurentian Mountains grid. We have to find out whether that's a thing or not, and whether we can get involved in some of that. But you actually completed your first full grid in 2018,
Correct.
Ken. So
Yes.
what have you been up to since then? You've had plenty of time to get into plenty of trouble since then.
So after the grid, I did something called the All Trails Challenge in the Catskills. It's a simple project. It consists of walking or running or whatever you want on every, single mile of trails in the park, of which there's about 350. But it takes you, okay, onto some mountains and then some smaller mountains. But some of the trails go to, waterfalls or past ponds. So it was a different experience, and that was lovely and fun. But now that my big project is 1,000 barefoot mountains, because I figured I'm having all this fun and other people would have fun too. So I've got to get this sport on the map and do something audacious and ridiculous. And I just enjoy it so much. If I don't have some other pressing activity, then like this weekend, I'm thinking about which mountains am I going to go out to and just get one, two, three, four, five more. Um, because to me, it's like a base case. That's a great way to pass a day, if nothing more important is, pressing on me. So
So
that's it. But I struggle. I want to go fast. I'm getting older, and but I still want to go faster, and I want to do more marathons. And I'm thinking maybe I should put my shoes on and do a few more ultra marathons and shoes. And so I've got other projects, but that's the big one.
Okay. And as for the book, because this was a project, but it's going to be released by the time this episode airs, where is the best place, or is there somewhere special you want to direct listeners to get a copy of the book?
Well, if you type in "chasing the grid," you'll either go to Amazon or to my website. Either way is fine. And then there's a button on my website to go to Amazon. And if you want to connect with me and just, learn about some of the things I've been doing, barefootken.com. And I spend a little bit of time on this some of the social platforms, and you can connect there too, or just send a message to me. I'm always happy to meet more people and hear more stories and connect with folks with similar interests.
we
Okay,
can put
perfect.
we can put that reference in the
Yep.
notes,
We can put the link in the show
show
notes
notes.
for sure.
My comments very quick. Well, it's a great book for anybody who's interested in trail running or FKTs or peak bagging or basically experiencing the outdoors, particularly the outdoors in all seasons, um, because there's very, very much a cyclic seasonal aspect to trying to do the grid because you've got to run in every month of the year. And it was noticeable once you got the idea of doing the grid And you go, well, okay, so what have I done and what have I not done? The things that you've not done were all in the tough months. So in winter or late fall or when it was, a bit less naturally attractive. And it kind of forces you into that, to experience the seasons that maybe naturally you wouldn't choose. I think it's a great book also for anybody who appreciates a sort of more minimalist approach, who says, okay, so um, I'm doing this. How do I do it in a way that challenges me a little more, or gives me a different type of experience, which you've explained in some detail, Ken. Great. I think it's a must read if you are interested in any way, shape, or form in the Catskill Mountains in Northeast USA, and the grid challenge, that kind of, if that calls to you, then you have to get this book and read it. You have no basically no choice in the matter. You have to go and get it and read it, because it's extremely definitive from that point of view and gives you some superb insights. So a fun read, unusual, a little different take on some of the aspects of running that we don't touch on too often.
I guess to go along with that, more on the other aspects. I mean, the book is about running and big goals, but it's also about, being human, continually learning about ourselves. Um, it's about not being afraid to challenge previous assumptions of ourselves and allowing for change, because I think that's kind of a theme in this book is I think a lot of people they think they put themselves in a box, and we kind of do that to other people as well, but you put ourselves in a box saying, yeah, no, I'm not good at that. But actually sometimes, if you try, not that you'll be the best, but maybe you'll find out that you like that, or you are pretty good at it. So I think that was kind of a theme in the book. Ken had to reinvent himself as a runner, and later, he reinvented himself as a minimalist. He started off being very extreme in his minimalism and then a little bit more moderate based on, what his actual needs were. And it was basically just him recognizing that his old strategy wasn't serving his current needs. So I think that's a message. It's a good message to all of us, and it doesn't matter what kind of running you do. I think that, that'll apply. The book is for anyone, I guess, that's looking for inspiration. If you like trail adventures and you're looking for some inspiration for your future trail adventures, this could maybe inspire you. If you're doing the grid, like Alan said, it's a must read. Also, because Ken provides a lot of gear lists and spreadsheets at the end. So,
Oh yeah,
a
I
lot of
never
useful
mentioned
information.
that. Or a spreadsheet. Well, Liz likes a good spreadsheet.
Ah, that I do. Yeah. Nothing like a spreadsheet to keep everything organized in boxes and columns and rows and everything.
And colors too.
And colors, yeah, if you print the spreadsheet, you put it on your fridge, you can color it
And
after.
and Liz, you saw the part where I was talking about my training log and injuries and irritation. So I came up with a color code, condition red, injured, condition yellow, be careful.
Good
Condition
stuff.
green, good as yeah, I thought you would like that
Good
part.
to go.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, it's funny because I've been having like the same color code system for marathon training, but more like the completion of the workout. So I have green as if you complete the distance and the
Hmm.
workout. Then if you only complete one of the two, like you did the distance, but you didn't really do the workout, it's yellow.
Hmm.
And then orange is anything like below. A red is if
Interesting.
you didn't do
Red is if
anything.
you miss.
But I don't have a red marker at the moment, so um yeah, I just put an X on it or something. Color it orange with an X.
So, thanks for your chat today, Ken. It's been pretty insightful, and thanks for giving us an early look at your book, which is sort of imminently out now. Um, so go and look for that, and check the show notes for getting a contact with Ken on his barefootken.com website.
Hey, Alan and Liz, thank you for giving me the chance to share my story. And it's been a lot of fun just to hang out with you guys and talk and share. So
Yeah,
thank
it's
you.
definitely been a good chat.
Yeah,
So thanks for
it's been
coming
very
on.
cool.
And yeah, well, we wish you luck with all of your future barefoot or otherwise uh, mountain running adventures.
And good success with the book as well. I
Yeah.
hope it goes
Thank
great.
you.
But also, I hope you get to run some of those road things and go fast. Like I wish for you to, have some more chances to go fast.
That's what you like. You're fast, right, Liz? So you like to go fast.
I like so yeah, I'm a little stagnant right now, but
You
like I want to go fast. I like to
are
try
you
and go
uh
fast.
are you a Tom Cruise fan?
Feels
I
the
don't
need for
think so.
speed. That's what
Exactly,
you
Oh,
Al.
said, yeah. I feel the need for speed.
yeah, that's where I
Oh,
am right now.
Liz, well, you might not care about this stuff, but I'm a huge fan. There's a woman on YouTube who's a Air Force commander, an F-16 pilot, and
Oh,
I'm there's cockpit footage and pictures of her flying her jet around really fast, and I'm just in awe. Anybody can go fast in different ways, and it's just the excitement, the exhilaration. So I'm with you. Even
yeah.
if it's 1 mile an hour, in the woods, we can still be
Yeah.
fast in a way. So
I mean, it's all relative, right? Like on the road, it's a different fast.
yeah,
It's a different fast in a 5K than a marathon.
yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, I'm still there, which is why sometimes I sign up for a few 5Ks or 10Ks instead because you can just do more of them and try again. If the race didn't go well, you get another try. Marathons are a little bit more you need more prep and afterwards you need more recovery. So
I call them survivathons now.
yeah. Well,
Yeah,
I guess
that's it.
that's pretty accurate.
Yeah.
But thank you so much. This was fun. So hope to see you on the road somewhere.
Yes.
Good stuff. Thank you for listening to another episode of Running Book Reviews. A big thank you to the publisher Velo Press for providing review copies of the book, and a big thank you to Ken for spending time with us today. If you'd like to leave us feedback about how we can improve the podcast or want to suggest a book that you'd like us to review in future episodes, please leave us a comment on social media. On Facebook and Instagram, we are Running Book Reviews, and on Twitter or X, we are reviews_running. Please also follow us on social media to find out about new episodes, or you can just subscribe to the podcast on your favorite streaming platform. If you'd like to help us out, we'd really appreciate it if you're enjoying the podcast to spread the word, tell your friends, share a link, etc., etc. Leave us a review on Apple Podcast or rate us on Spotify out of 5 stars. You can also check out our little extras on our Buy Me a Coffee site. Just go to Buy Me a Coffee and look for a creator called Running Book Reviews. You can buy us a coffee if you want, but access to all of the stuff on there is free. And we'll see you on the next episode. That's all from Running Book Reviews. Bye for now.
Bye.